So I made a weapon tier list a while ago, and I'm still updating it with the new changes, and I've been keeping up with it and seeing what's changed and testing it out and seeing if it's still as good or if it's maybe worse or better, than it used to be. But Heysel's Pick is one of those weapons that kind of fell under the radar. I used it for a while when the game first came out, and it was pretty bad. It had no range, the scaling was really bad, the damage was bad, everything about it was pretty bad. But I kind of forgot about it. I didn't really see anything change about it, so I just didn't really, even think about it until right now when I read some YouTube comments suggesting that I actually use it again. And I was like, all right, I don't think anything's changed, but I'll give it a shot. And actually, a couple of things changed that make it pretty good now. And the first thing that changed was in Regulation 1.09, I must have missed this, Heysel's Pick got increased intelligence scaling. And this is really important because it used to stop scaling at 40 intelligence, which is okay, but at 40 intelligence, your spells do way less damage than at 60 intelligence. So the fact that it scales all the way up to 60 intelligence now means the spells it casts do way more damage, and it actually gains way more magic damage as well. Also, in that patch, apparently they added it so Steady Chant increases all magic damage you do with the weapon as well. So basically, Steady Chant not only boosts your spells, but it's like a war cry for the weapon, adding about 40 magic damage. That's really useful, and I did not know that, so that is actually really good. Other than that, with the poise changes, two-handed hammers also have a bit of poise at the end of their attacks, so if you have any poise, you can tank through smaller weapons like thrusting swords, one-handed curved swords, one-handed straight swords, things like that. One-handed spears as well. So you can actually trade with people with the Heysel Pick now, and you can win the trades too, especially if you have Steady Chant on. And that's just with the weapon itself. Now, it can also cast spells, and I'm not even good with spells. So, here's the thing. In the hands of a good mage, I would put this thing, and again, this is just my own stupid personal ranking system. Don't take it too to heart. But I would probably put it as like a B in terms of how useful it is if you are a really good caster. For me, it's kind of like a C, because I kind of suck with sorcery. I don't use it that much. I'm just not really that good with it. But in the hands of somebody that actually knows what they're doing with spells like really well, I can imagine this thing being pretty decent. Certainly not top tier or anything like that. The range it has is still extremely small, and the tracking it has is still not very good. But there are a lot of things you can do with it that I did not realize, and a lot of patches have changed it. So I wanted to show you guys what this thing can do now. So there are two main ways to build the Heysel Pick. There's the more caster-oriented side, and then there's the more melee-oriented side. I opted to go for the melee side because I'm trying to show the weapon, not really the spells themselves. And to do that, I have a soul level 120 sorcerer with 18 attunement, 40 vigor, 26 endurance, 27 strength, 12 dexterity, and 60 intelligence. This gives you pretty much the base stats to use the weapon while also giving you the decent strength scaling, because you're mostly going to be two-handing the weapon, and when you have 27 strength, it gets multiplied by 1.5 to be exactly 40, and that's obviously when you're two-handing, and that is the soft cap. So you end up getting about 472 AR, and it's split damage, but it's the good kind of split damage with two evenly split big values, not one tiny value that gets wrecked by flat defenses. So even though it's split, it actually still does decent damage. Now, in terms of rings, they can vary. You're going to want the Sage Ring, because you don't have any dexterity. You're going to want the Bellowing Dragon Crest, and you're going to want the Young Dragon Ring to boost all of your sorceries. And the last ring is kind of up to you. You can use Ring of Favor or Life Ring. I opted to use the Ring of Favor because the Life Ring only gives maybe about 100 more health, and the Ring of Favor gives me more equip load, more stamina, and a little bit more health. So I think overall Ring of Favor is probably the best choice for the last slot, but you can use whatever you want. It changes depending on the situation. I just try not to be squishy as a mage. I like breaking that whole stereotype that you need 20 vigor as a mage and you get 2-shot. No, you can be just as tanky as every other class. You just need to, have armor and have the actual rings for it. So, Ring of Favor is what I would go with for the actual last slot. So because the Heysel Pick is so short, a lot of strategy while using it involves getting people into range of you. And luckily with spells, that's actually very possible. You gotta think like, a pyromancer using Fire Surge to piss people off to get into range. That is the basic strategy you have to apply to here. Farron Darts can annoy people. Homing Soul Mass is a big one that people enjoy rolling into because then they think you have no other defensive measures. So Homing Soul Mass is one of the most important spells to actually have on this build, because they see it, they roll into it because everyone can dodge it, and while they're rolling into it, you're already mashing R1. And it swings pretty quickly too, and you can free aim it to go in any direction you want. So Homing Soul Mass is a great way to bait people into actually getting into the R1 range. Same thing with Farron Dart, Soul Arrow. Really, any of these spells is really good at agitating people to get into range. Another great thing about the Heysel pick is the fact that you can have like 6 different ways to change up your timing with your attacks. You can have regular R1s, and you can have Farron Flash Swords, and you can have Soul Great Swords, and you can have Soul Arrows, and you can have Great Heavy Soul Arrows, and you can have Soul Spears. You can have every spell in the game that has slightly different cast times that can screw people up. And when you constantly rotate between these, it's much, much harder to actually dodge and predict. Now, you can't just stand there and launch a Soul Spear against someone who's standing still. You'll never hit them. So you need to be able to chain these things together. And it's easier said than done. A lot of people don't fall for it. But if you use something like a 2-hit R1 combo, and then you use a Soul Greatsword as they're rolling away, most people just don't immediately expect that. It'll probably only work once per fight, but what I found was pretty successful is doing 2 R1s, waiting about a half a second, and then doing a Soul Greatsword. Now the reason is, you can't do it quick enough to catch them on the first roll. It would have to catch them on their second roll. So it actually hits them when they're on their second roll. It hits them that far away. So you get them on the 2 R1s, they roll backwards, you delay it a little bit, they roll backwards, they see the Soul Greatsword begin, and they instinctually, just roll backwards again, but it actually hits them on that second roll. So you gotta mess with the timings a bit, but there are a lot of combos you can do. You can even do something like an R1 into regular Farron Dart for an extra little chip. You can try a Soul Arrow, anything that is not something they'd expect. People don't expect to be roll caught with a tiny little club with a very limited range moveset, and when you add spells on top of it, you suddenly have unlimited range, and it catches people off guard. They're not really prepared to deal with it very often. So now against some fat guys with a bunch of poise, they will definitely not get stunned by your pick, and they will stun you. You have to use a different approach, and the thing is, you almost use it like a crossbow. So if you have a Havel staggering, Great Sword R1s, you can just stay out of range and just pelt him with spells every time he swings. It's very frustrating to fight. So it's actually really easy to deal with these types of people by just constantly staying out of range and just launching little baby spells at them over and over again. Eventually they might get greedy and go for a running R1, which you can trade with and poise through. So you need to be constantly stopping them from doing their staggered R1s. And if they continue to do those R1s, you can just sit outside of range and just hit them in the face with a Soul Spear or something like that. So it kind of counters this playstyle very well. And against small weapons, use your poise. I had about 20 poise in this video, and it was plenty to tank straight swords, one-handed, basically any small weapon, thrusting swords, curved swords, straight swords, spears, anything like that. It was enough to tank a one-handed hit. And the hyper armor starts very, very quickly on the maces, but it also doesn't last very long either. So you need to time it right. It's almost like timing a parry, but you will absolutely win the trade if you time it right. And it is easy to do. So you just need to learn the timing, and you will be able to trade with these weapons very easily. Now the range is very tiny, so against something like the spear, you're going to have to use forward momentum. And you can refer to the last video I made about the pickaxe where, short range weapons rely on the opponent's forward momentum to come into range of you as you're beginning your swing. So that's not an easily mastered skill, and you need to study the forward momentum of all weapons to understand exactly where you need to be able to successfully trade in range. But once you master that skill, using short range weapons like this that actually do have hyper armor becomes a lot easier. This is all not even scratching the surface. Like I said, I'm not a particularly experienced sorcerer. I don't practice very much with it. There are some guys that are really, really good at it, and I would love to see what they can do with a Heysel pick, because in the hands of a good sorcerer, I would imagine there are a lot more ridiculously good combos you can do. Is it better than, a magic straight sword or something like that? I don't know. It remains to be seen. I've never seen a really good sorcerer use this thing yet. So I would actually like to see that, and I'd like to see what other people can do with it. I'm sure there are some other spell combos I haven't even begun to think about. I just wanted to kind of bring this to everyone's attention because it's actually a lot better than it used to be, which is really nice. It got a lot of indirect buffs via, actually it being buffed itself, and then poise being changed. And overall, it's pretty usable now. I'd say it's actually pretty decent. In the hands of a good player and a good sorcerer, it is kind of monstrous. So I would say give it a try. Thank you, YouTube guys, who suggested that I use that. Otherwise, I totally would have kept it down there in the D tier, because I didn't really think it changed that much. But it kind of did. It's not bad now, so give it a try. Heysel's pick. Underrated and pretty good.